doing on video? Are you ready to roll? Are you ready to roll? I am. Are you ready to roll? Is that right on?
Yeah, it's on. We should do. How far out are we?
Oh, yes, Scott, we have to vote on two meetings. No, whatever, Jeff. Okay, we can do that. Ladies and gentlemen, the that was my big boy voice. Hello, Beach Boys fans. Okay. Is everybody running? I just want to make sure everything is going. Bruce, have a seat there, please. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andy Hollenden. I teach here for the Indiana University School of Music, and I teach a class, an entire semester devoted solely to the Beach Boys. Yeah. Yes. Where students get to learn about your songwriting, your recordings, your live act, watch videos, learn the whole story, and get 3 credit hours of college credit in doing so, which, if I may say, is a win-win situation. Who's with me? But anyway, I don't want to bore you. I'm going to get over to these guys, but one thing I got to say to these guys is thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you. Thank you. You guys have earned everything that you've gotten, for all the great songs you've written, the great records that you've made, all the concerts that you've played all over the world, for all those millions of people. We all just want to say thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you very much, all of you. All right, Mike, here you go. Oh, by the way, down here we have Jeff Foskett, who's a guitar player, singer, been with the band for a long, long time. Scott Totten here, guitar player, vocalist, band leader. Of course, you all know Bruce Johnson over here in the blue cap. He's been with the band since 1965. And last but not least, Mike Love, everybody, founding member. Here you go, Mike.
How do you operate this? Oh. Just kidding. All right.
I'll start the question. So these two guys on either end probably started listening to us before their voices changed, and I mean it in a really nice way. And I think the way Brian voiced everything probably kind of caught their ears, and they're grown up and married guys and kids and the whole deal, and they're in our band. And we've known Jeff a billion years, and I wish we have knew you that long. But what is it, about 15 years now? Yeah. And our musical director and. Beautiful voice, killer voice. I just move my lips. It works out. About how many shows a year do you guys play, approximately?
Last year we did 142 performances. Yeah, and there were just a there were just a few where we did 2 shows a day, maybe a half a dozen times. We did an afternoon and an evening, or 2 in an evening, or whatever it might be. But so there's probably 135 individual performances at different places.
And the songs have not been lowered 5 keys because we got older. I'm not kidding. We, for the most part, what percentage would you say the keys are pretty close?
I would say 95% of the songs we do in the original key, and the rest of them are in a higher key than on the record.
Because it's more friendly to guitar playing a lot of times. But our voices are still hanging out somewhere, right over here.
Fellas, what motivates you after all these years? I mean, you got the Stones and you got Paul, who go out on the road every few years, and but you guys are doing it. You're doing it nearly every year, pretty much every year. You're doing it for as many gigs as Alan. You answered Alan's question. What motivates you? What makes it happen?
The IRS. And college tuitions for children, grandchildren, things like that. Yeah. But actually, the fact is that it's the audience response to our songs. Well, I mean, obviously, it's a great way to a hobby became a profession, and so we're very blessed and fortunate for that. But it's the audience response. It really is the appreciation of the people, not only in just the United States either. We're gonna go to Great Britain in May, and we're already sold out at the Royal Albert Hall in London, which is pretty amazing structure. It's a great place, iconic, and we have 2 shows there, and a few others around the country. And every year we get invited to go, various places in the world, which is interesting. We get to see other, cultures, architecture, cuisine. It's all very interesting. So, but it wouldn't happen unless there was what do you call it? An audience, a demand.
I'll say one thing. We had a little piece of luck a couple of years ago, I guess. We had, believe it or not, a night off on a Saturday, and we were in Austin. So we got to go see our road warrior hero singing the Great American Songbook, Tony Bennett. Not worthy on that one.
He does a lot of gigs too, and he's 80s.
He's 80, almost 89.
Yeah.
And his voice, you know how like a young guy goes, somewhere over the ring, and then years later, somewhere. He doesn't sing like that. He just hits it. His voice is ageless.
He does his vocal exercises every day, and the voice is kind of like musculature. If you do some form of exercise or yoga or something, and to keep fit, your musculature.
Duets with Lady Gaga.
Yeah, he made a joke that night. He said, there's an album coming out with Lady Gaga, and you got to buy it because she needs the money.
You guys, if you want to hear a great Lady Gaga away from her music, which is interesting, in the Great American Songbook style, download "Lady Is a Tramp" with Tony Bennett. Unbelievable. This is what led her into doing the album with Tony. And let's talk about the Beach Boys. Okay.
It's been said a lot of times that Brian Wilson, around the time of Pet Sounds and Smile, was in a rivalry with the Beatles. Did you feel the pressure at the time of trying to be in the best band in the world?
I don't think so. I mean, we knew that the Beatles were incredibly successful and stuff, but we have a style of singing which is completely harmony based, and 4-part harmony. And many other groups sing 2-3-part harmony, something like that. You know, the Everly Brothers they harmonize beautifully, and we're a big inspiration. But I think the harmony that we did separates or distinguishes the Beach Boys from so many other groups, and the chord progressions and all that.
And the way Brian voiced those voices. I mean, you can sing, 4 parts, but he kind of was so influenced by the 4 Freshmen, but it came out Brian, and it's just amazing where he just even when he constructs an arrangement or a song, God only knows, the verse, besides, voicing it for voices, the verse starts with a 5, if any of your musicians, instead of the root note, like in a D, it starts with an A with the D chord. I mean, people don't do that. Elton does it, but...
Root, isn't that agriculture?
Okay.
Or in music?
It might be interesting to note that in 1966, the Beatles were number 2 in the NEMS poll behind the Beach Boys, who were number 1. So the rivalry, if it existed, probably in that year, the Beatles were trying to catch my associates.
Yeah, George Harrison even said that in an interview. He said, we were just trying to keep up with the Beach Boys. That was fun. But no, I didn't look at it like that. I mean, I think there's different styles of music, and there's so many different great, performers and performances and recordings and stuff. And we're just part of the musical landscape, and we were fortunate to Yeah, I think these days on oldies radio, the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Motown are the three most performed genre. So it's really great. We're in some really good company, and we're just fortunate to be well regarded and stuff like that, and to still be able to go out and do performances and have people show up after 50 years, which is it's kind of amazing.
I should say something about the no rivalry, just appreciation. That I took two Pet Sounds mono albums, because that's the way Brian mixed things, and the radio AM was all mono, and the Beatles would make an album, they'd say, George, make a stereo mix. Anyway, I took Pet Sounds to England in May of 1966. I just kind of put it in my bag. But this is the opposite of Don't Shoot the Messenger. I'd been in the band about 10 minutes. I was on my third album. We did three albums in 1 year. But I had the album with me, and everyone was curious about it because Sloop John B was a really big hit from the album. And so eventually, Keith Moon, he would have left The Who in a heartbeat to be one of the Beach Boys. He just loved that genre. But he brought Lennon and McCartney over to my hotel, and they wanted to hear Pet Sounds. So I played it for them twice, and they really loved it. And I'm told that the vibe from Wouldn't It Be Nice went into Here, There, and Everywhere on the Revolver album. So it's no rivalry, it's just appreciation.
Well, I think it's always been documented that the Beach Boys, for a period of time, were the #1 act in England, and bigger than you were during that '68 period where that one album was recorded live, that you were the biggest band in the world as far as the UK was concerned.
It's all about the music. I don't think we're trying to be. You just do music, and all this wonderful stuff happens to you, and we're still hanging around, 150 nights a year.
I hang around from town to town. I'm a real cool head. Oh, never mind.
What's different about touring now? Luxuries or, certain things that are different, that the amenities and things like that?
The wheel. Yeah, when
No
we started
bathrooms
out,
down the hall.
it was pretty funny when we first started out. There was a station wagon with the U-Haul trailer, and we would take all the amplifiers and drums and other instruments and go from one place to the other, usually Midwestern ballrooms. And we would set up and break down our own equipment, and then we found out there was a thing called a roadie. So that we delegated instantaneously. And so we would, stay in the little Holiday Inns or Days Inns or something like that. Now we spoil ourselves. We stay at some really nice places, and even once in a while we might take a private plane if it's impossible to get to from one place to the next. Once in a while we'll do that. And so it's actually much nicer these days. The technology of like the sound and lights and all that barely existed when we started out in the early 60s. I mean, the sound systems were designed to announce, wrestling matches, things like that.
They'd have those speakers in the middle, hung from the ceiling that
Yeah.
went in 4 directions. One thing, do you remember this? Carl always wanted it to be better and better and better and better, and he was awesome about that. So he went to Roy Orbison, who had a sound system that he traveled with, and so Roy gave him advice, and so Carl went to the people that built Roy's system. And so we got this great sound system, and it had leather around the speakers and our name on it. And we had some show, I guess 65, 66 in the summer. And we went on stage and we started singing with this brand new sound system. It totally blew up.
I was going to ask about what determines what's going to be on the set list when you're touring, versus
Mr. Man determines.
Usually, I like to start off a bit retro. We go back to the earliest hits, you know, and like to get it moving a little bit. Some pretty much up tempo, and so try to do that. And then we've found through trial and error that some songs are go over really well in a public appearance, but sometimes songs don't seem to register with the audience. And so some are better left to people sitting and listening to their albums or their records or whatever. And so just by trial and error, we figured out a rhythm and you know, like what song complements the next song. Like you wouldn't put 409, which is a car song, right next to God Only Knows probably, and come out of God Only Knows into Fun, 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 maybe not. But we might group some of the Pet Sounds things together, God Only Knows and Sloop John B, and wouldn't it be nice? They more complement each other musically as well as vibe-wise. You know, there's certain things that complement each other in terms of the mood and the feeling. And so that kind of, through trial and error and just thinking about, you know, tempos and moods and things like that. If we're in a really nice sounding theater like this one tonight, looks like an amazing theater, we might do a 4-part a cappella song, which Bruce has a Grammy for songwriting, and he once told me that a cappella in French means naked.
Naked and nude.
Yeah, but we're doing the American version tonight. So, but anyway, we'll do 4-part harmony, the 4 Freshmen songs, which my cousin Brian became, you know, obsessed with in the late 50s. We learned about 3 of their arrangements. It's a Blue World and Their Hearts Were Full of Spring is the one we still do. And yeah, graduation day.
Were the high-lows an influence too?
Not so much.
Not as much.
I should ask you guys a question. Okay, you're all young, so you probably heard us through your parents. Did you hear a lot of our songs from the best of albums also? Well, Mike, you're talking about sequencing the show, the set list. Well, Mike does the same thing on the best of album. I think before The Endless Summer came out, Capitol wanted to put, you know, Best of the Beach Boys Volume 85 out. You know, and that didn't cut it with him, and he's great at picking the right songs. So there's flow, and so what we're talking about live is in these best of albums. Sounds of Summer, have you ever heard that album? It's kind of pretty big. It's up towards 4 million, but he sequenced the whole thing like a concert. So it makes it a better listening experience for you to discover us through those albums.
And if I could just add to further along that question about the set list, as I have to help Mike with the set list every night, and of course
he has the computer and I don't.
He's been doing it for 110 years, so he's much better at it than I am. But a couple of other constraints that we have are how long of a show the venue wants us to do. So many places that we go, they want a 90-minute show, and if you're familiar with the catalog of the Beach Boys, trying to whittle it down to a 90-minute show is very difficult, and inevitably you're going to you're going to cut somebody's favorite song or what they wanted to hear. And then, in addition to that, like as Mike was kind of alluding to, different types of venues would call for a different type of set list. So if we're outside at a state fair and everybody's standing up, then we're probably not going to do a lot of ballads. Whereas if we're at a casino where people are in a hurry to get back to the gambling, we might, you know, just keep it up tempo. But if we're at a performing arts center, a place like we're at today, we would do some, you know, softer cuts or some deeper cuts, things that are more introspective.
You're forgetting about Germany. They want to hear Barbara Ann 30 times in a row there, and I'm not kidding.
I like the set list that Michael makes because it's different every night. I don't think there's been one show where we've done the same set 2 nights in a row. So that's interesting, and that's how deep the catalog is. I mean, when you think about it, there are so many great songs.
Yeah, our preferred way of doing things is to do an intermission. We'll do an opening set of about an hour, 55 minutes to an hour, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and do a set, and we'll often start with either a Pet Sounds song, or we did a cover of California Dreamin', which is an iconic song known all over the world. We did our arrangement of it. We have some video that we did with our version. And John Phillips and Michelle Phillips were in the video, which was pretty far out. And anyway, so we'll do a second half after an intermission. And that's when we're more likely to do something a bit more esoteric, a little bit more of what people refer to as a deeper cut and all that. And so that it'll be over just around 2 hours of music. And that's our preferred thing. When we go to, like Scott mentioned, a casino, it's like they begrudgingly want music there. They just want you there so that we'll bring people in, and it's a marketing thing for them. And they'll have different types of, they'll have country, they'll have R&B, the Beach Boys once in a while. Well, they do that so that the different demographics they would like to appeal to are solicited, but they don't really care about music, in my opinion. And for us, it's kind of like we feel if we can't do our 2 hours of music, we don't feel as satisfied as we would otherwise. Now, I've heard of people who come out and do 30 minutes and then leave, get back in their bus and go. But we're not like that. We always like to do, everybody does a lead in the group, and everybody, yeah, in fact, yeah, we have the video of Carl Wilson singing God Only Knows, and Dennis Wilson singing Do You Want to Dance? Now these guys, Carl passed away in 1998 and Dennis in 1983. And to have them singing with us, it's all very inclusive. It's as comprehensive as we can possibly get. And that's what we like to do. Whereas, some places if you're in a baseball stadium, In My Room doesn't go over as well as it does in a performing arts center. So you just learn this by trial and error, like I said. And there are other songs that don't play well to a large audience that's mainly an audience who knows you from stuff they've heard on the oldies radio station.
We once played a prison and made the mistake of playing In My Room.
Oh.
Really? You guys play frequently for local and regional symphonies. How did that come about, and how does that work?
Our manager once told me, don't talk to the guys about a symphony because it's not going to happen and it's too expensive. And it is, but we are playing with symphonies, not every night, of course. And it's, we have a few, we have enough songs arranged. Some of the arrangements we don't like, a couple of them. But now that Mr. Berklee School of Music graduate, Scott, is our music director, he's been writing some really beautiful charts that we're singing to now. And so that's a great experience to hear. Just like on Don't Worry Baby. You have like 40 strings playing Don't Worry Baby. Oh my God, it's a real experience. You'd love it.
Yeah, the highlight of our symphonic experience so far for me has been the Sydney Opera House. We played 3 shows there and they were all sold out. And that's an iconic structure and it was great. And the promoter of the event said that they'd never seen an audience respond that way. Because most symphonies are, you go there and you listen and you applaud but with ours, our music generates a lot of, happiness and positivity and actual euphoria at times. And sure, we have the more subtle In My Room and Warmth of the Sun and God Only Knows and stuff like that. But we also have Help Me Rhonda, Barbara Ann, Fun, 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 I Get Around and all that, Surfing USA. Yeah, and so it's, that was a real, the promoter said he'd never seen an audience in Australia respond that way, which is great. And it's kind of like, it's an extra dimension for us though, because we as Bruce said, you hear the strings and the horns and woodwinds and stuff like that. And the opening, I've always felt that the opening strains of California Girls is lends itself to symphonic beautifully. And when you hear it that way, it's a thrill for us.
Speaking of Sydney Opera House, just go down the line, starting with Scotty T. What's your favorite venue you've ever played? You have to only have one.
Favorite venue I've ever played.
Okay, next. Yeah.
Very difficult to choose one. If I had to choose one, that one was already mentioned. Maybe Red Rocks Amphitheater.
Michael?
I don't know, Royal Albert Hall for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's an iconic structure, and we were, as it was mentioned, voted #1 group in England, #2 the Beatles, #3 the Stones in 1966. So for ego reasons, I guess.
But he's not competitive, though.
Sydney Opera House, because it's close to a really great surf break.
Yeah, really.
I would say Joe's Cafe on State Street in Santa Barbara.
Oh yeah, right.
I think mine's Sydney Opera House as well. Yes, nice lady. Yeah.
Do
yeah.
each of you have a favorite song you like to perform? What is your all-time
Favorite song you like?
Well, while they're thinking over, I'll just tell you that I should say something. So you've got Tony Bennett doing the Great American Songbook. Then you've got, so that's a genre, right, of music. Then you have all those great songs that came out of New York, at the Brill Building, where you'd have Neil Sedaka writing songs and Carole King and Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. And at the same time, Brian Wilson and Mike Love were writing songs. So, and they're equally as amazing to me as You've Lost That Loving Feeling by Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. So my favorite Beach Boys song that I'm not singing on, I am now, from about 1963, Mike wrote the lyrics, and Brian wrote the music, and it's always going to be The Warmth of the Sun. That's my favorite.
I think mine is Wouldn't It Be Nice? Michael?
California Girls isn't chopped liver.
And he's a vegetarian, by the way.
Scotty T?
And the ayes have it. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, but Good Vibrations is the most unique, progressive, avant-garde, and it's still avant-garde. Nothing sounds like it. And I came up with, I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations, which we will do in its complete form tonight. Yeah, anyway, so I think that's probably the most unique and artsy one. But, I mean, there are things that appeal to various personalities and individual tastes and stuff. So it's also, if you talk about what's your favorite song, it's like if you had 6 kids and 4 would fit in the boat in the shark-infested waters. Which 2 are you going to throw out, you know?
Who's your favorite parent?
Yeah, really. So I don't know. It's kind of tough because you've got a lot of great songs that are all neat songs. So you really care about all of them. So it's a little rough to pick out a favorite. But these guys are so elitist that they probably have reasons that are beyond the ken of most mortals. They're beyond the ken.
Do they ever get tiring to sing? And not that they're all great, but to you, do they ever get?
Yes. There's just a couple of them.
Is that why you change it up from?
That's one reason why we change it up. Sometimes we'll retire a song for a year or more.
A few decades.
Yeah. Like for a while, I got burnt out on singing rock and roll music. Of course, that's not our song. That's Chuck Berry. No offense to Chuck, but he was a big inspiration for particularly the writing and so on. But one can get a little tired of doing a particular song. But it also we don't have to approach it that way so much because, like we said, the different venues, like some venues will want us to do an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes. So that's, if you figure out doing all the hits that we do, that's about an hour. And then if we do more than that, then that's when we get to do songs that we subjectively enjoy doing because of the nature of the song. Maybe like a song like "Why Do Fools Fall in Love," which is a cover by, it was originally done by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. Well, we did our arrangement of it, and it's really fun to do. But if we only have a certain amount of time, we may or may not do that, you know. So we don't have to get tired of the songs because the very types of places we do and the amount of time we do, you know, it just kind of happens naturally. But we'll almost always do all the hits we're known for, because I think that people come to see you based on what they know, and the majority know you from radio or you know, and their record collection and stuff, and so it's so it kind of is a natural selection process, kind of like, I don't know, who's the guy that went? Never mind.
Could I just suggest one thing? You might want to go and dig up a mono version of Pet Sounds. Brian, for the most part, didn't have hearing in one side of his ear, so he had to mix in mono, and the way you promoted recordings back in those days, you know, it was AM radio. FM was there, but it wasn't happening yet. And the mono mixes are very powerful mixes. And as I said earlier, what the Beatles would do, they'd say, George Martin, make a stereo, because we all knew everybody heard us in mono, but Brian only could do mono, and they are so punchy. I mean, you would absolutely love it. In a perfect world, play it on a turntable. I mean, actually get the album, and there are, you know more about us than we do. Do we have a mono a pressing of it released? Okay, just listen to it. You'll love it. It's very cool. No, it's mono. It's something, you guys, we have so much technology, but we've had the thump and bump on the radio for years, and we've, you know, the microphones since before World War II, they've been able to get the 20 to 20,000 cycles, and when we were able to get into the world of magnetic tape recording, all of a sudden we've had, since, you know, commercially, since Bing Crosby started doing his radio show on tape, we've had this great fidelity for years and years. But you need to listen to at least one Beach Boys song anyway in mono to see why it worked.
Mike, I've got a question. It's kind of on a different tack here, but about your songwriting partnership with Brian, because you had so many hits that came out of that, you know, Wilson-Love combination. Did you usually sit down with a piece that he had already started, or would you have a concept? Would you be working in a room with a piano, or just sort of anywhere you had a chance when you were on the road?
It can happen either way, but I remember one time Brian was known for being in his bedroom for days on end. Anyway, went and got him and took him down to the beach and walked him around, and then came back and sat down at the piano and wrote a song called "Do It Again," which was 1968. And it went to #1 in England, which is pretty cool. But that was a function of me going on a bit of a surfing trip with some of my high school buddies, maybe 10 years after I was in high school. But nonetheless, it was a look back and appreciation of the beach and all the great things about being in Southern California. And so I came up with the concept. We sat down on the piano, and it only took 15 or 20 minutes to write that song. But I had the concept in that case, and we came up with the tempo, and Brian banged it out of the piano. Then we did the track at his studio in his home in Bel Air, and a fellow named Stephen Desper was the recording engineer, and he came up with an interesting effect which on the bass and stuff, which started the record. And but other times he would have Brian would be working on a melody and a chord progressions and stuff like that. And so I would sometimes take an acetate, which Bruce referred to, with just the track, and then I would go ahead and write lyrics to it based on the feeling I was getting from the music. And also trying to keep in mind that, okay, you're writing at this particular point in time and whatever year it was, but how can you make it so that it appeals to more than just that moment in time, a person who's a certain age at that moment in time and stuff. And so the best example I can give you is when we first heard the lyric of Kokomo in the first verse was by John Phillips. I wrote a second verse on a little versette, a little bit, from the second verse on, I wrote the words, and I came up with Aruba, Jamaica, who want to take it. But the first verse said, off the Florida Keys, there's a place we used to go. Off the Florida Keys, there's a place called Kokomo. That's where we used to go to get away from it all. And I said, now wait a minute. That sounds like an old guy, reminiscing about his lost youth or something. So I only changed one thing, the tense. Off the Florida Keys, there's a place called Kokomo. That's where you want to go. So that's a whole different point of view. And then with the chorus, Aruba, Jamaica, who want to take it, Bermuda, Bahama, Come On Pretty Mama. To me, Come On Pretty Mama could be the senior citizen saying, let's get in the RV and drive down to Florida. Or it could be the little kid saying, come on, pretty mama, So in other words, tenses can be important, and that was an example in that song of two places wherein I was thinking, okay, how do you make this so it's more universal and appealing to multi-generations? And one of the neat things about our concert and the music, there was a little 10-year-old girl, we were in, I think it was Paducah, Kentucky, and she was in a meet and greet, and we asked her, well, what's your favorite song? She said, 409. Now, 409 was the B-side of the single Surf and Safari in 1962. It was created 40 years before she was born. So that blew my mind. It was amazing. I said, here's a 10-year-old girl, her favorite Beach Boys song out of all those songs is 409. It's truly amazing. So not that we had any conscious awareness of doing something that would appeal to various age groups when we did 409, but it's amazing how songs can appeal irregardless of the age of the audience or what.
When I joined the band, I was 22 years old, and I was out of school. I was working at Columbia Records, and Glenn Campbell was in the band subbing for Brian, and he was getting his career going. And Mike, we were friends. He called me, and I made recommendations and phone calls. But Brian, we had to have the band had to have someone being in that spot. So I volunteered for the weekend. Anyway, it kind of progressed quickly. We really kind of hit it off, and I knew the band anyway. And the business was smaller. I did in high school with Jan and Dean, but I wanted to just get to California Girls. Now, I was 22 years old, and I'd already been spending time with Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. You've Lost That Loving Feeling, all this stuff, and then being around Brian now and Mike, another great songwriting team. But I remember Brian was all excited about his track for California Girls, and he said, Mike, you got to write some words. So I watched Mike in the hallway of Western Recorders, in the hallway, just with a legal-sized piece of paper, writing this great song very quickly, and it was very impressive, very impressive.
When we were pulling out the tapes on California Girls and listening to all of it, at one point an engineer asked Brian, what is this called? I mean, it just says, we don't know on the tape box. It says, okay, take 8. You're grass and I'm a power mower. Take 8. And that was his title for that particular.
Yeah, well, God Only Knows originally was Fred Only Knows.
Well, McCartney's the original lyrics on Yesterday were
Scrambled eggs.
scrambled eggs.
But Brian didn't want to say God in the song, right? He was worried about that. Was that part of it?
He should be.
Hey, I have a question that I've never asked Michael, and he brought it up.
What?
Give me one example of a song that you took an acetate home and wrote the lyrics to.
Good Vibrations.
Wow.
But where did you write it?
Can you name a hit?
Listen to this. Listen to this. There's more.
I dictated the lyrics to my then wife on the way to the studio. I dictated it while I'm driving.
He was driving. She was writing it down. For Good Vibrations.
I love the colorful clothes she wears. You know.
Isn't that cool?
It was, yeah. It was.
Bruce, you've written some great songs too, right? Like Disney.
Who's that? Bruce Johnston?
Well,
yeah, right here.
I wrote a song that should be titled "I Write the Song," because nothing's happened since then, and he's got about 40 ahead of me. It's okay.
But I also wanted to ask you, last Thanksgiving I got to go to Holland for vacation. I know you guys spent some time over in Holland. I had a good time in Amsterdam. Did you guys have a good time in Amsterdam?
We were there one time, Mike, and because I'm such a smart ass, they were taking pictures of us in front of the Amsterdam Hilton on the ice, and I started jumping on the ice, and it started doing this. You know, so
Yeah,
a great time.
It was a different experience because before going to Holland to record, we'd always recorded in Hollywood, and it was, and so it was pretty neat. We all had individual rented homes, and I stayed in a place called Bloemendaal, and would go to get the fresh fruit in the morning, and had the muesli and the cereal and all that. So it was a really neat experience to do that, but it was costly too, because we flew all kinds of stuff over there, and it was a ridiculous expense, but it was a great experience.
How much of your time do you spend involved in the music, performing, recording, rehearsing, versus the business of being the Beach Boys?
Well, it's a matter. Well, we have an agency, ICM. We have a management, and the agency fields all the what do you call it, the requests for the Beach Boys. Somebody will call up, from the university saying, okay, or they will call out to people. There's some places we do virtually every year, so it takes a bit of organization. And sometimes you'll get a request in two different places on the same day, one on the East Coast, one in the Midwest, or the Midwest and Northwest. And so obviously you can't be in two places at one time. We haven't perfected that art quite yet. So, but that just, it doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a bit of organization and sorting out. It takes more time to travel to get to where we're doing than anything else. That's the biggest time constraint that we have is the travel. Last night, where were we last night?
I don't know.
St. Charles, Missouri.
That's right, St. Charles, Missouri, in the county right next to St. Louis. So Linwood University. Lindenwood, is that what it's called? Lindenwood. Anyway, we did a really nice performing arts center at the school there. But then we drove however many hours, 4 or 5 hours this morning to get to here. So that's the most time-consuming thing. And as I said, we did 142 performances last year. We'll probably do nearly that this year, and it's, we're all, for instance, we're all pretty much all through with booking August this year already. But I play a part in that along with the agency and management. I field things, and sometimes we're offered places that we don't want to go back to every once in a while. It usually has something to do with either getting there was murderous, or maybe if we have our druthers we as musicians would rather play a performing arts center than a casino, let's say, because we can do our set list the way we want to do it, and people can come and experience a full range of what we're capable of doing, and we can honor a person's request more so in a performing arts center situation than we could in a casino where they just want you in and out, so like the burger.
Would you guys mind, this is a music question and something that my dear music friends that were hardcore fans of yours with the Hodads. Can you talk a minute about Sunflower? Because we look at Sunflower as one of the most seminal albums that you ever did, and also, maybe next to Pet Sounds, the greatest album you ever did, which was underappreciated at the time, I think we all know. But it was also the album that we think was where everyone was the most involved, at least from the songwriting credits and the overall mood and vibe of the album. Some of your best material was on it, some amazing lyrics from you, Mike, and some wonderful work from Brian and Dennis as well. And Carl, I mean, it's just an amazing album. Some thoughts on that album and kind of what I was saying.
It was an amazing group effort album, and it was fun, and Brian had this huge house and this really cool studio, and I remember Al was recording a honk on a horn for one track from Brian's car and holding the mic over the top of out of the studio down to the garage and silly stuff like that, and it was just a lot of fun. I don't know, it's just one of those things that kind of it just happened by accident, and I do remember I had the greatest girlfriend then too, as a matter of fact, and that didn't hurt, so I had a wonderful time. Well, that's part of it. I was single and I don't know what, 27 years old. I was pretty young, but the songs, oh my God, that was Forever on that album. Yes. Yeah, I mean Dennis in the shadow of Brian. I mean, he was emerging as a writer, and I love Forever. And is it Our Sweet Love? Is that the name of it? I mean, just all these amazing songs, and I think that's probably one of our least selling and most loved albums.
Go figure.
I just want to ask you guys a question. I have to do this because I come from the business side of the music business. Because I was a staff producer at Columbia Records, and I thought I'd probably be president of the label someday when I was 21 years old. I was thinking this. Is anybody thinking about going in the music business at all? There's a book, it's called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. If you read it, you will be chairman of Sony. It's that good. So I just want to recommend that if anyone's looking for that career direction. Donald Passman.
Seeing what you see, maybe what you lived, would you have any words or anything that our generation, like kids like me, should know? Following their dreams.
Following your dreams. Following your dreams.
Like,
why wouldn't you?
I mean, like, is there anything that we should know, like, on dreams?
He mentioned a book, and to be knowledgeable about the music business is very crucial, actually. Because when we started, I didn't even know what publishing was. I knew vaguely that you had to copyright a song so that people, there was something on file with the government that you actually wrote that song. But publishing, I didn't know about that. And the Beatles as well as the Beach Boys, and there's two pretty successful groups. Neither one of them were able to hang on to or own their own publishing because when you're an act that's just starting out, you're just so happy to get something recorded and something played on the radio, or in this case on the internet these days, which is a blessing and a curse. The blessing part being that you can be heard, worldwide. The curse is maybe you don't get paid. But that doesn't keep you from being known for your music and creating a following, which may someday lead to you know, being successful at doing live performances and making a living doing it. So anyway, I would say if you're serious about music, then you should be knowledgeable about the music business, and you'll be able to self-protect better and not be taken advantage of, like so many have been.
You know, imagine a guy coming up to the Beatles and saying, your songs are great. I'll publish it for you. Really? So then you lose 50% of everything there, because the publisher, not the writer. You think you write something, you own it? The publisher owns it. And a lot of times in the old days, a publisher was a good thing because they would put you together with other writers. I'm not thinking people in a band, and they'd put promotion money up. I would say, you know, Steve Jobs says, just kind of do something you love. Yeah, follow your dreams, but I would say, agree with Mike, just arm yourself with knowledge about the music business, and that all you need to know about the music business, Donald Passman, that's a lot of ammo. But I'd say mostly, don't pollute your mind with alcohol and drugs. You're going to make stupid decisions. You know, stay clear and follow your heart. You're going to be a very successful guy.
I can sum it up in one line that a friend told me once. Never forget that the word business is bigger than the word music.
Were you thinking of becoming a musician? Yes? Then there's two phrases that I've heard, and I'm sure everyone's heard this. Do what you love and the money will follow. And the other one was, I heard it from a jazz bassist named Steve Swallow. I don't know if he originated it, but he said, if you want to be a musician, don't do it because it's extremely hard and it's a very difficult life. But if you have to be a musician, do it because it's the greatest life in the world.
You know, Scott, could you talk a little bit about the process of, you know, you've been changing the arrangements back to closer to
Restoring.
the records. Basically restoring the arrangements in the live band. How did you get involved with the Beach Boys and end up taking on that role, and what's the process like?
Well, it's kind of a long, crazy story how I got. None of these guys knew me. I just started showing up at gigs, and after a while, they thought I was part of the band. That's the short version. But after a while, we had a little band reorganization, and then I was lead guitar player. Well, still am, but and then I became musical director. And I had a bit of a different philosophy than my predecessors, and I think it had to do with, you started to touch on this earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt Mike. Someone asked about the different technologies and advances and things like that have happened over the years. And I think that really affected the live show of the Beach Boys, because in the 60s, it was very difficult to recreate those records, the instrumentation on the records, unless you traveled with a horn section and a string section and, you know, and that kind of stuff. And the economics of touring didn't really make that feasible. So what I think that you know, Carl and the guys did as they were on the road is that they changed their arrangements to not sound just like the records, maybe in part to entertain themselves, but maybe in part because they had no other choice. You know, they had to do something to make it viable in a live situation. And while they were, and these guys can speak better to this than I can, while they were those artists all touring together, you know, you've all done it, gone to seen, you know, a band and there's a hit record, but they do it differently. It sounds different. Do you like that, or do you not like that? Some people, I mean, it depends on the kind of music it is. But I think that at this point, 40, 50 years on, everybody's heard classic radio. Everybody knows how California Girls is supposed to sound. And nobody's interested in my version of it, okay? You want to hear what you're used to hearing. So we're not trying to sound like we're a record, but we want to play all the parts. I take the view of it the same way I think a conductor does to a score by Beethoven that he's getting ready to perform for an audience. The notes have already been written, and it's just a question of getting everybody to do their part and have them start and stop at the same time. So that's really been my focus, is to say, okay, well, let's go back to what was on the records, because that's what everybody knows. That's when it was done very economically, voice-wise, and perfectly. And why not do it that way? So in a lot of cases, we've gone back and restored some of the original vocal parts, some of the instrumental parts. And nowadays, you don't have to have a horn section and a string section necessarily. in order to get the sounds because they exist through synthesizers and samplers and keyboards. So you can have a keyboard player replicate the sound of several musicians and therefore getting you closer to the sound of the record that you guys are all very familiar with.
In recent years, we've seen the Temptations and the Four Tops and the Mamas and the Papas pass through town, and in many cases, there's one original member or maybe zero original members. In a couple decades, few decades, when you're not touring anymore, what would you like to see happen to your songs in performance?
Well, they better do them well or we'll haunt them.
What's the trend?
Can we get some of the students dying to ask questions right now? Students in the class, you over there?
So with a career that spanned as long as yours, and this question is mostly for Mike Love since he was there from the start, of course, there have been a lot of ups and downs. So what would you say is like your favorite period, your favorite moment in your career, and if you don't mind answering, your least favorite period?
Sunflower for me, that was the best time in this band.
I don't know. I think that it's hard to pick out a favorite period. There's things that appeal to you because, like 1966, getting voted the #1 group in England, #2 the Beatles, #3 the Stones. That's pretty good for your ego. But the technology and everything is better these days than it ever was. And as Scott alluded to, you can have the orchestra there in your computer, and you can replicate the songs better these days than you ever could. So I think our favorite times are probably yet to come. For instance, May 31st, Royal Albert Hall. Be there or be square. That's going to be pretty fantastic. We're already thinking about, okay, what songs that we don't ordinarily do are we going to do for that show? So, obviously, when we did July 4th in 1985 at the Washington Monument Grounds, and there were like 750,000 people there in person, we did 2 shows, an afternoon and an evening. One year we were in Philadelphia in the afternoon, in the evening in D.C., and we played for over 1.5 million people live on that one day. So that has to be a high point. It's a Guinness Book of Records type of event.
One of our guitar players was just some guy from Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
He was with us on that too.
Yeah, so things like that, those are obviously high points and stuff. But musically speaking, like the Royal Albert Hall, or as we mentioned, the Sydney Opera House, those are iconic places and with audiences that are, population. Like, for instance, we had a song called, a compilation album called Endless Summer in the mid-'70s. Well, the corollary in Great Britain was called 20 Golden Greats, and we sold 1 million copies in Britain. That was like 1 out of every 25 people had a Beach Boys album. That's pretty amazing. So they're kind of high points like that, but I don't usually look back all that much. I look to what are we doing tonight, and what are we going to do this year, and what about a symphonic tour in 2 years from now, and whatever. I'm thinking ahead, prospectively rather than retrospectively.
I think we should say that Royal Albert Hall is really amazing, and it was built in the 1850s.
Yeah, it's old.
It's just really wonderful, and we played there. We played there 2 years ago, and I mentioned on stage that the last time we played there as the Beach Boys was December 17th, 1970, for Princess Margaret. So, but what I want to get to is great places to play, but we've played at least 3 times at Carnegie Hall, and that was really cool in our own country. That's our spot.
Back there in the back.
Me?
Yeah.
Hi. I wondered how going to Indiana and meeting Maharishi influenced your music or just your life in general.
life in general, and specifically a couple of songs. In fact, tonight we'll do a song. Are you going to come tonight?
Yes.
But,
Well, if you can't, we'll do it now.
yeah, no, we did it. But I had my birthday in February and March of 1968. It was in Rishikesh, India, and it was really fascinating. Maharishi would speak every night, and sometimes day and night, and the Beatles were there. When I got there, the Beatles were already there, and Mia Farrow was there for a little while. Donovan was there. So it was very fascinating from that point of view, but it was really fascinating from the standpoint of what Maharishi speaking and everybody listening and meditating for many hours a day. I mean, Maharishi would literally say, okay, go and meditate as long as you can. And Prudence, I don't know if you're familiar with the song Dear Prudence. Well, Prudence didn't come out for like 3 or 4 days. She would meditate for they'd had to go and get her out of the room. She took it to heart. She ultimately has a PhD in Sanskrit from the University of California at Berkeley. So she teaches TM to this day. And that was a teacher training course in Rishikesh, India. That was the purpose of the course. And many people did become teachers. But I was so new to meditation, I just learned a couple months before in December of '67 in Paris. So I still meditate, I do. And I've gone to various long courses and so it has been, for me, it's been a life-enhancing experience. It's something you practice on a daily basis, and it helps with a lot of things. Being able to deal with pressure, stress. You can lower your metabolism to a level of rest twice as deep as sleep, which is very profoundly restful and relaxing at the same time. So a problem doesn't necessarily disappear or go away, but it's a lot easier to deal with expanded awareness and that tranquility that comes from the meditation. But also, in tonight's show, we're going to do a song called Pisces Brothers. I call it. February 25th is George Harrison's birthday. Mine's March 15th. We're both Pisces. And when George passed away, 2002, was it? Or 2001. I wrote this song reminiscing about George Harrison and obviously because of the time spent in India. On my birthday, I was given a painting by George of Maharishi's teacher they call Guru Dev. So I made up this song. We do it pretty much nightly in the show. And it's very sentimental, and we have a little video to go with it. And Scott here did the guitar playing on it, and it's just a very emotional experience for me to be able to do it. And it's really received well by the audience, because I think they appreciate it's a real life experience and somebody who deserves the credit for being what he was, a very spiritual guy, a great musician, great singer. You know, he did that song Something, did Here Comes the Sun, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. He did a lot of great music. And this is something, a song that was inspired by me lyrically and musically from that experience. So that was a very transformative time for me. Whereas other people, I mean, it's really weird to me because I learned to meditate and I kept doing it. And it's not always exciting. It's sometimes boring. But the good news is it's for the health and for your longevity and stability and ability to undertake, 142 shows and deal with them and do reasonably well at it. The benefits outweigh any other negatives. But I've always found that it was kind of weird that my cousin Dennis went into heroin and alcohol and all kinds of self-destructive stuff John Lennon is known to have done that as well, and several other people. I mean, a person can learn to meditate, and then you still have to use your intellect to make choices. Is this life-supporting or destructive? And all too many people have gone and chosen the destructive. And that to me, I understand it, because people are looking for some kind of way out of what the stresses that have affected their lives, whatever they may be. But I don't know. It kind of befuddles me at the same time, because you're given the choice in life of doing something that's life-supporting or not. And why would you choose the lesser? And so that's not an answer, it's just a question. But for me, the meditation has provided a real positive contribution to life. Yeah.
I think around the second week of class, we listened to the county fair. It's been bugging me for about 5 weeks now. What the hell is behind the koala bear part?
I don't know. So you say, what was
behind the koala bear?
Yeah, the lyrics talk about the guy at the booth is talking about winning a stuffed koala bear, but he wins a dog, and it's really just messed up my entire head.
I think you better start drinking.
Well, the big, strong guy knocked the bell in the sky and took your girl and the doggy away.
Yeah, that's right.
But there are koala bears all throughout those little interludes. We're wondering who decided on the doggy and the koala bear.
Well, I'm guilty, I guess. But
You did county fair in the song set. I imagine it was great.
We all love that song. Though.
yeah, it's a cute song.
We love those songs.
That's a cute song, because and there's county fairs everywhere.
Yeah, and kids love, like Barbara Ann, they some of these songs you're talking about turned into kids songs. I just want to add that in, but I want to just go say something. This guy, Jeff Foskett, he's been a fan, like Scott over there, of the Beach Boy and the Beatle world of music. And so he started playing with us in the early 80s. I talked to him for 24 hours flying to South Africa. And that's kind of when we first met, to go to a week of concerts down there. But I just want to say that this guy is a talented singer, great guitar player, great singer. Perhaps if you listen to the lock on the acoustic guitars on Kokomo, that's Scott, and he made the demo with us, which turned into, Jeff, sorry, Scott. He made the demo of Kokomo that turned into a master, and he sang with us on it. And Lucky Brian has had Scott in his band for how many years? Brian Wilson. Seriously, listen, come on. Hold this. Jeff, sorry.
16 years. I had the pleasure to work with Brian, yeah.
How has the transition been to working with Michael and...
Instant.
Yeah, instantaneous. Well, it's like going home, It's
Back to what Scott was saying about the arrangements. I wanted to interject then, but now's the opportunity. How do you feel? We saw a set that you did a year and a half ago at Anderson, Indiana, at a racetrack. We were extremely impressed about how the set moved and how you were describing it, and how they were like, mini sets, or what do you call them, songs put together, without too much fanfare in between, but they were tight, precise, and the arrangements were really harkened back to the original arrangements. Did you find that something that was really a positive for you moving in, coming back?
Well, yes. As I said, I really enjoy the set list, and I enjoy what Mike and Scott do. It was kind of unique coming back to doing the medleys, if you will. But the full song medley, so segues more than a medley. Yeah, and But I mean, I really enjoy it, and I'm having a great time, really.
Yeah, I would say that Jeff did have a little bit of a adjustment period when he came in, because when he was in Brian's band, they would do a song and then take a break. And Jeff would go get a drink of water, or go towel off, get himself a lozenge, and then come back and they would do another song. And in this band, we go bang, 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 and maybe after 10 songs, you have a chance to go get a drink. And so we would start the next song, and I'd look, and where's Jeff?
But
Jeff,
in all
we're
fairness,
going,
to Brian and Jeff, Brian's band is a mighty band, and I think if you ever go see Brian play, take the mindset. This is total compliment to Brian. Kind of go and realize that you're seeing a guy like Burt Bacharach, a great writer, great arranger. It's so much different than ours, and it's something that I think you would enjoy. And I think you had 16 great years, and I'm really so thrilled to work with you every night again. I have to teach you how to bow, though.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Just a curious question. So obviously we spent a lot of this time discussing like you guys' influences from the past and stuff. Do you guys hear anything that goes on currently in music that appeals to your sensibilities, or
I like Bruno Mars.
We met him backstage at the Grammys, Mike, and he said, "You know, I opened for you guys when I was 15." So he said, "What do you mean?" Well, we were all playing the Aloha Bowl, and I was in my dad's oldies band. He was so cool to me. I listen to a lot of country music because I like rock and roll. I think it kind of lives over there a little bit. I didn't like the halftime at the Super Bowl. That was kind of messed my mind up. It was strange. Not her talent, but just the whole thing was weird. And she makes some really great records, I think, recordings.
Hi.
Hello.
I wanted to ask Bruce, what was it, could you tell us a little bit about working on the Pink Floyd album, The Wall?
Well, what people don't know is we had it all set up for Pink Floyd to meet us in Dallas, Texas. And we had a really great studio and a sound studio in Dallas. And it was a fantastic studio that we were going to work in the next day after our concert. But they called the night before because they wanted the Beach Boys to sing with Pink Floyd. And we had it totally organized for them, but for some reason they couldn't get there. And so the project went away. But I got called to see if could you find some voices and work on some of the songs. And basically, they had a tax year. The English do crazy stuff. They had to be out of the country for a year for something. And so this was kind of Roger Waters' solo album. And I still have the demos of his solo album that turned into The Wall. But I want to go on record. It was supposed to be the Beach Boys singing with Pink Floyd. It wasn't supposed to be me and some hired guns.
What about working with Elton? Did you do that in the room with him? Because you worked with him in a couple of songs, right, Bruce?
I'll tell you, we were talking about the fifth and the bass for God Only Knows. Hang on for a second. Fifth and the bass for God Only Knows. Elton got all those crazy bass things from loving Brian Wilson, and he loved the Beach Boys. And I don't know where you were. I tried to find Mike, but I think you were on vacation or some downtime thing. So I got Billy Henschey, Carl, and Tony Tennille, and just basically did pretty four on the floor, simple oohs and ahs, and don't let the sun go down on me. And we just kind of went to number one. And Elton hated his performance, and so he, in the middle of it, he goes, "Don't discard me." And so Gus, his producer, said, "What do you think of that, you guys?" To all of us, and Tony Tino's from the South. "Oh, it just sounds so Southern," and I don't know, they left it in, and it was a huge recording. You just get lucky visiting other artists and you sing on things. And I mean, there's the great recordings with the Beach Boys in Chicago. Oh my God. So I love it when you kind of cross-pollinate musically with other bands.
I had a question about Smile. So many of those songs were released on other albums before the 2011 release of Smile. And even in our class, we were learning the different versions do you guys have, is the new Smile the definitive version of those songs to you guys? Or?
Well, I think the definitive version was done in the late 60s. Yeah, that was when you had Carl Wilson, Alan Jardine, Mike Love, Bruce Johnson, Brian Wilson, and Dennis Wilson. All, you know, I think everybody was at the top of their game vocally and so on. So anything that's a replication of that, I would have a tough time saying it's as good as, or I mean, it may be as good as, but for me, just thinking in terms of Carl and Brian at the level at which he was at then, like for instance, the song Wonderful, you know, it's pretty amazing. And to compare what was done then to subsequent efforts, I don't know. For me, it doesn't come up to that level. However, a song, an album, music can be redone like every night. We replicate the songs that we're known for, and so it can be as good, and maybe for some it would be better. But as personal taste, I would say that the original Smile things were pretty phenomenal, and we all worked very hard on them. They were shelved, however. And so then what you had is, you know, Heroes and Villains would come out, or something else would come out in different forms, at different times. But it's the stuff we worked on originally, I personally think was the, you know, as good as it could get.
Could I make a suggestion? There's a man over here who worked on the historical box set of Smile and has a Grammy. Why don't you weigh in on this and introduce yourself? Seriously.
Okay, well, say come to the class on Tuesday, but as you guys know, that a lot of those tracks had been bootlegged over the years. But one of the issues with Smile, and the reason why, you know, I think maybe one of the main reasons why it didn't come out back in the day, was it was so fragmentary. And I think in order to put that together was kind of beyond the technology that was available in 1966. You couldn't really effectively have put a lot of those pieces together with a razor blade and little pieces of tape. And one of the things that we really needed in order to assemble a version of Smile that was released a few years ago, we needed all the technology we could get. We needed a relational database just to be able to keep track as to where the pieces were, because they were scattered over, and I'm not exaggerating, if you include Good Vibrations, over approximately 75 reels of tape in the archive. And sometimes there was a piece of a vocal section was on this particular multi-track over here, and in some cases we're working with a vintage rough mix over there, and it was just, you know, it was incredibly difficult to put together, but the material, I mean, especially those original vocal tracks that they put together are just amazing. And for me, the most satisfying moment in working on that whole thing was putting together a montage of just the isolated backing vocals to hear just how incredibly complex and intricate, but also how well each of these guys' voices fit into the mix. It was an amazing project, and I hope I never have to do something that hard again.
Best historical album, Grammy?
Yeah, best historical, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I just had a question for Bruce. I'm a fan of your songs, and I've seen you in concert a few times, and Disney Girls is the only song yours that I've ever heard in concert. Do you ever do any of your other songs?
Years ago, we'd do Tears in the Morning and in England, and we did I Write the Songs a few times, but that would never, now I Write the Songs is a really cool song because of this. I been alive forever. I wrote the very first song. Chorus, I write the songs that make the whole world sing. It's my version of writing a hymn about God, you know, so that's my cool little secret thing. But it's not a song that would have, it would be, if it had been a Beach Boy recording, it would be what I would call a career-ending song. It would be kind of like giving the Rolling Stones tie a yellow ribbon, you know? So we don't do it very much, but I'm very proud of it, and I earned a Grammy for it, and you know, all you need is one, right? So thanks for asking.
I was going to also ask, Mike, I actually talked to you on Facebook a year ago. I think I was hoping it was you. I was asking about releasing your solo work you've done with other people, celebrations, stuff like that, officially releasing it on CD. And you had said something about, you know, looking into re-releasing possibly. I was just asking if there's anything more to add about that.
Yeah, I am going through all the stuff that I've done and looking into it and see which ones work together well. And but see, in this day and age, with the recording industry being how it is, it's kind of a challenge. I think you have, you know, you'd be very fortunate if you're able to find a home for your music in a soundtrack of a major motion picture, or what have you. So I do intend to have those songs see the light of day. It's just that I'm in no hurry to come out just with the impulse to get them out. I want to. It's kind of like having your toddler go out and play in the freeway. You know, you want to make sure that your song is presented as best you can. You know, rather than just going out and I mean, even with the Beach Boys, we had a song one time called "Somewhere Near Japan," and it was written by John Phillips. I remember Capitol Records was releasing that, and it came down to they had signed Duran Duran to a record deal, and they had to choose whose record is going to get promoted at the top radio station in LA, and they chose Duran Duran because they'd made a big investment with them, and so there's a case of, even if you are a well-known, prominent group, the record company, you're at their mercy. So when I say I want to make sure that the songs are presented with the chance to, you know, to be successful, then you have to consider a lot of factors, and so. But yes, I have written a lot of songs, produced a lot of songs, and other than bootlegs, they're not really available. So, but we hope they will be in the next, you know, year or so.
Did you ever see the movie The Goonies? Well, you go to Mike Love's house someplace, and if you can get deep enough underneath, you're going to find that pirate treasure of all his stuff, and someday it's going to get out of that locked up cavern under there. And I mean, he has great stuff just in his vaults that he's written that most people haven't heard. Andy, you going to sing something for us?
Is there anybody else in the class or anybody else have a question? Because they're going to need to be going. Anybody have a last minute question? Or
I just have one statement.
One statement?
My little daughter was born. We used to drive around. I would have endless summer playing all the time. All of a sudden, out of the back seat, little Deuce Coupe, you don't know what it is. Every time I hear that song, that's what I hear.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for all coming today.
Thank you.
It'll be good. All right, I assume we're going to get the special long
song
version.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go up back to the hotel and watch this on the internet.
I thought it might just play back here. Let me find, both you guys are Sunday.
Sounds like it, it really does.
Oh, we got the rest of them back there.
Thanks for coming.
I need to find my Sharpies. Yeah.